tangibility and externalizing your thoughts in something physical, and you'll see why when I start presenting, which is now. So my name is Alexandria, and my work is called the Goal Buddy System, imagining an experiential approach to long-term goal management through playful interaction. How might the design of playful interactions within a long-term goal management system encourage the process of goal achievement? Sub-questions: how can the design of a tangible system embody inquiry, accountability, and activity? These are 3 principles of my system. How can a design system connect 2 friends through the goal achievement process? In what ways can the design of an interconnected, tangible, and graphic interface support the goal achievement process? So what is a long-term goal? It's a personal aim to achieve a particular state, condition, status, knowledge, or skill that requires commitment over an extended period of time. Why are our long-term goals important? An intrinsically motivated long-term goal is a product of our personal values. Our values give our daily existence meaning. Time is finite. One only has but so many moments to live. When we attend to our long-term goals, we give ourselves the opportunity to feel alive. Pursuing long-term goals is a way to explore one of the ancient philosophical questions of existence. It is a means to seek, to find, to affirm your purpose, or ask if it even exists. What is my approach? This system engages goal setters through an application of gameplay, social interaction, and tangible interaction strategies. The system uses these strategies in order to create a playful experience as opposed to utilitarian interaction with the goal management interface. A utilitarian approach to goal management favors efficiency and productivity. It tends to reward information-seeking behaviors and allow for quick completion of activities to compress the experience of time. The purpose of my system is to create an experiential approach to goal management. Instead of compressing time and easing process, the interface seeks to emphasize process and amplify the experience of time. The interface does not exist to reward information-seeking behaviors, but is designed to build an emotional connection with the user and encourage enjoyment. This description is based off of Anna Munster's writing on embodiment and interface. This continuum of human-computer interaction was built from that work in Amber Howard's seminar class. It demonstrates how traditional information-seeking interfaces position the human as a user, whereas embodied and multimodal interactions position humans as participants. And this is where my investigation lives. My long-term goal management approach elaborates on the idea of a goal as a point from getting to from point A to point B. Instead, it thinks of goals as a series of moments. Because while every goal might have a clear endpoint, every point in between might not be as clear. So, the Goal Buddy system is a long-term goal management system that builds an ongoing connection between 2 friends over the topic of their unfinished goals. They manage their goal by meeting weekly or bi-weekly and interacting with the GBS touchpoints. I'll be using the word GBS for Goal Buddy system. It's easier. So these touchpoints include a handheld device, which is a tangible user interface, and an online dashboard, which is a graphic user interface. Buddies use these interfaces to manage their goal, connect with each other, and connect to the greater Goal Buddy community. And just to give you a little bit of understanding, a tangible interface, this means that it's a physical interface which situates interactions within the user's context by mapping digital information to physical elements. So the 2 elements of gameplay within my system are tasks and challenges. A task is a single activity which will allow a goal setter to come closer to their goal achievement. This is based on David Allen's Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Management. And he says, you can't do a project, you can do an action. So in the same way, my goal buddy system says you can't do a goal, you can only do an action related to a goal or a task related to a goal. Then there's this other component of the system, which is challenges. This is connecting with my principle of inquiry. And a challenge is a question, a prompt, or prompt chosen by a person's partner goal buddy, which is delivered through the tangible device while a task is being done. So, this is the entire experience of the goal buddy system. And the whole cycle is judged in relation to when the goal buddies meet. So the goal buddies meet, they discuss their past progress, which, as I said, they could be meeting weekly or bi-weekly or even monthly if that's what they choose. They recall their tasks and challenges and how they did. They record their task, which is stored in the device. Then they use their device to browse challenges. Now this is being fed from the graphic interface, so there's a whole library of challenges that are being fed into this device. They choose a challenge that they think would be challenging for their buddy. So it's a surprise. You choose it at the meeting, then when you break, you leave the meeting, you go into your normal everyday lives, you begin your task, whatever it may be. So if I'm applying for a job, maybe my task is to make my resume, which I'll maybe do next week. And so when I begin that task, the challenge would be revealed to me, and this would be something that my buddy thought from hearing us talk, like this would be good for you, you know, you need to do this or that. So then you have a choice to accept the challenge and respond to challenge, which is also recording your response in the device, and then you finish your task. And then you meet. So it's a continuous cycle, the two phases, meeting and completing. So because the idea of long-term goals is so abstract, I'm going to start with one scenario of use with one possible investigation or one possible form of the tangible device. So Angela wants to explore and curate a doable, eco-friendly lifestyle, and Sammy wants to practice regularly to compete at an East Coast B-Boy battle in August. So here they are at their meeting. They're talking about their progress from the week, and as you can see, they have these two devices in their hand. So they use the devices to retract these paper lists. And on each list, there's an archive of their past tasks and their past challenges, or responses to challenges. So here they're talking and they're using these things as Rachel kind of gave me a precursor to this. They're externalizing this conversation and using it to talk from. So then, once they finish talking about what they did last week, they decide what they'll do next week by recording a task. They take a smart pen, which is in the middle of the spinning top, and they write on the piece of paper. So here Sammy is saying, this week I'm going to practice for 3 hours on Tuesday and Thursday. This is a smart pen, so this information is being synchronized to the dashboard. So here he is, he's setting his goal, and she would be doing that as well, setting his task for the week. So now they browse their challenges. This is the next major part of the system. In this particular form, the way that they browse challenges is by spinning this top. And as these two tops spin, because they are both within the same place, interacting and constraining their behavior to produce this result, they're spinning these tops, and these two tops are reacting in a novel way, playing music, maybe having some sort of sound changes, light changes. And so that kind of rewards their behavior of being in the same place, being there through this process. So when the two spinning tops fall, they open up into these screens. And these are the different challenges, which I'll talk about where these came from later on. And so each of them can choose from these different challenges. Each time they spin it, they open the top, and they have a different challenge. For example, one is one up. Can you one up your task? Find a more specific activity within your task and report about it. Or role model, asking about who is your role model. State one characteristic about them they have and incorporate that into your task. So this is just displaying how each of them chooses. If they like what they see, they trade tops. So then physically the tops switch colors, and you have basically a piece of your goal buddy. So now they switch tops, they go out into the world, and Sammy is practicing, so he's beginning his task. He goes to notify his device that he's begun practicing, and his challenge is revealed. It says one up, and he laughs because he always tells Angela he wanted it to be man up, but he decides that his way he's going to one up his task is by he's going to make his own dance combination set. So he said he was just going to practice. Now he's one-upping by making his own set. He records that in his device and goes about his business. Meanwhile, Angela is at her home. She already finished her task and her challenge, but she's feeling very discouraged. So she's looking online and checking Facebook, because you know we all do that. And then she's on her widget and she sees a message. And basically this is a special function of the dashboard widget where it takes these paper archives and brings them back up to say, look at where you were 1 year ago with this goal. So then when you finish a challenge, you put the top upside down on the other bottom of the top. So when you come into the meeting, your buddy already knows that you are that you have accomplished your goal. And when you spin the tops this time, they produce a novel reaction. So now I'm really running out of time, but I want to tell you about kind of what was informing this idea. So as I mentioned, everything is revolving around meeting, but the two other big components of the gameplay are tasks and challenges. This map starts to explain how there's different levels of gamification within this system. The first level would just be to complete a task. Second level, to just complete a challenge. And then, if you complete 4 challenges, you get to choose from all the challenges online. And you can also create your own challenges. So this is a user-generated challenge library that you can choose from. A visionary level would be at the level where they finish their goal and they're starting a new one. So I also use this framework for tangible interaction by Hornecker and Burr. I found it was the most human-centered framework for tangible interaction, and all of these concepts are related to the final scenario that you just saw. Sorry, I don't have time to explain it. So one big element of the system is tasks, and tasks exist to focus the goal setter on a single action to take towards achievement. This was really informed by the audit that I did, because I noticed that profile-centered goal management systems led to an accumulation of goals. It didn't even require for someone to take action, whereas my system says, say one thing you're going to do, complete that, and then say something else. So it doesn't encourage the broadcasting. Another thing was that I found that through my audit that this quantitative feedback from goal activity was not very encouraging, it's not very motivating, and it kind of flattened the whole idea and the significance of long-term goal management. So challenges exist to push the goal setter to assess and clarify those actions and the overall goal. These are some questions that I curated from some sources to basically act as the source material for the challenges. So these questions are like, if I had to choose a role model for this goal, who would it be and why? If I had time to start working on this goal, what's the first task that I would need to complete it? And what are some conditions that could be present to help me work on this goal? Like good working conditions, the right light, the right food in my body. So these were organized by 2 criteria. One is the SMART criteria. This is a business management criteria for judging goals. And then this is a motivational approach to well-being and life adjustment. These are variables within that study that were given as to participants to judge goal setters determination, support, willingness, urgency, etc. So now this really should have been before the scenario, but like I said, it's so abstract I wanted to leave it till the end. Put that at the beginning and leave this stuff at the end. So the way that I made that final scenario is by doing a series of small investigations. I then took parts of those small investigations and combined them to create the final scenario. So the first investigation I did was, how can I design for sensitivity and possibility within the interface? One way that sensitivity could be designed for is that there would be multiple modes by which you could record tasks. For example, a paper task, the kind of information that you would record on paper versus on video or on audio within a device. And what kind of life would that recorded information have after you recorded it? And that really influences the overall experience of the system. So another question I asked were, how are challenges browsed? Because that's a really big element of possibility and really the most important element of possibility within the whole system. So you could browse limitedly, full, or have no browsing at all. But it's interesting because within every one of these situations, even though some seem to lend more possibility than others, it's the power of the designer to suggest the idea of possibility through these forms and through the movements and interactions and the qualities of the device. I also did some wireframes for the graphic interface. These were not built out to the same degree as the tangible interface because I felt that, for one, I was more interested in the tangible and exploring that for my thesis work. For two, it is the device which you interact with the most. So it is something that you're going to on a weekly basis. Whereas the task archive and the challenge archive, the challenge gallery, is something that you would go to occasionally to basically customize your gameplay and to look back at your experience. So this is just an example of the widget and an overview of it in context. So that was investigation 1. This is investigation 2. Investigation 2 is about designing interactions over time. And it charts these on these different points within the goal-ready cycle that pertain to tasks. And I have a second investigation that charts them as they pertain to challenges. So, within the task investigation, it's showing what is the difference of experience between a gradual visual display of time, how close we are to getting to the next meeting, how long it's been that I've been working on this task, things like that. I'm just going to go through this. And then within the challenge iterations, I was looking at how the form itself could suggest perceived choices of possibility versus having a form where the choices would have to be revealed through interaction. Which, if you notice the spinning top up there, that was the one that I really liked because I liked the idea of having to interact with the object to get information out of it. So each of these were combined to create that final scenario. And in conclusion, I guess my next steps would be to make more combinations of these things. I also felt like the tangible interaction framework I was referencing, some of the concepts within that, such as performative interaction, were under explored. So for example, I was looking at a handheld device, but what would happen if it was more of an environmental sort of interface where I use my whole body to do something, to yell, to move. So there are certain concepts in that. Another thing is what do social psychology, personal information management frameworks have to give to the goal management aspect of the system? What do experiential fields such as art, architecture, and film have to lend to how you build an experience over time? And that's it. more process than the actual final design. So that will be rolling as we talk, unless you want me to reference something.
I'm really uncool, I'm going to say it right now, but I don't know what B-boy is.
Breakdancing. If you're cool, you don't call it breakdancing, you just call it breaking.
Okay. Now, we're still cooler. One thing I think of games a lot, I think of reward.
Say it again?
When I think of games a lot, I think of rewards. And that was one thing I didn't quite understand, perhaps, from the presentation, what happens when you complete a task. Is there a sense of reward, or is that something you thought about kind of building into this, or is this the reward your satisfaction for a task well done?
So, within these last iterations, let's see where they are. The reward really comes out more through the physical changes within the device, which I didn't explain. So, for example, I mean, it's a very small reward, but I equate it to the idea of having a to-do list and checking it off. The people who would be using the system are already intrinsically motivated, so it almost acts as like that extra to do to have it check off. So, for example, in this order and disorder form right here, it has a series of modular units that are symmetrical, and then they become unsymmetrical. And so it suggests the idea of, I want to make that right again. And so it really just acts as like almost a check off. But it has this extra layer of play. I think, for example, in the middle one of recalling the task, I had the idea that you could run your finger down these, like each of these things, and then it would replay, if it was audio that you recorded, would replay that. And so it's kind of the idea that you kind of have this device always on you, and it's a reminder more than it's like, I'm going to win because I'm going to make this thing do something. But I think the reward maybe is more within the social interaction of coming back and saying, I did this, I learned that, and having the other person encourage you. So maybe I would answer it, yeah, that way. But I think the gamification map, it starts to talk about how if you complete 4 challenges, then you can choose from a whole library of challenges. That's the most bump that I was getting in terms of like reward. But I think that the system definitely calls for more of that to sustain engagement.
It seems to me with kind of task management systems, that's like the sweet spot, maintaining engagement. I've tried a million, I've designed several, and they all fail. And that really does take in, it's not an instant failure. It's I've used it, I'm using it, I'm not using it anymore. It's always that it's either very hard to say I've completed something, or there's no reward. I like what you were saying about perhaps the device itself changes something. You know, perhaps it's all asymmetrical and spiky, so I complete my reward and then it becomes smooth and fun to touch. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that these interactions, they are really conservative. Like, for example, the orb in the middle, it goes from light to dark. So you record a task, and it starts getting darker and darker until you complete that task. So it's very conservative, and I think that that's where like next iterations could be a little bit more extreme and have a little bit more of a dynamic relationship with the person.
You've chosen a really hard problem. You know, when we talk about designing task management for work, what we realize is that you have 10 different people, you have 10 different ways of managing and motivating tasks. I think it's a really interesting way of approaching it.
Yeah.
I do think that maybe incorporating more user feedback, or starting to incorporate user feedback. I know it's really hard to build this thing. might maybe also
What do you mean by user feedback?
Well, just putting this in front of users and understanding how different kinds of users would use it. For instance, I think in the scenario you showed was very, there are a lot of six steps to get to a long-term goal. So users don't think like that. It's kind of understanding how different users manage their different to-dos or tasks or what have you. Might extend what you've done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I guess my question for that too is though, could there be a niche for the person who wants an alternative way of approaching it?
Yeah, there sure could.
Yeah. Okay.
So this buddy system, you're essentially, it's like a contract or a kind of agreement that you arrive at with a friend. I mean, that's why it's called the buddy system, right? So it isn't in the context of, say, a work scenario or an office, etc., where there's certain measurable goals. This is really more personal goals that you will want to achieve, and that your friend, you're kind of helping each other to achieve this. Right?
Yeah.
So when you, if that is the case, I think that the language of a conversation between friends has to somehow enter the sort of attitude or the ethos. But that's really what it is. It is in a way, whether you achieve whatever time frame. Maybe you tell your friend, okay, I'm going to be on your back and you be on my back, and I'm going to achieve this within the next 6 months or something achievable. And then so you have these milestones, I guess, along the way. But you map them together. So it's like that. You know what I'm saying? So the game scenario is there to codify the whole process, but really, it's kind of like a human being interacting with another human being, telling each other what can we do together? You help me, I help you. Yeah. Right? And so I'm just wondering whether in your interface, or even in the object, the top, I'm curious about that object because it has a very nostalgic reference, right? And when you just look at the object by itself, it's made of wood normally, but you kind of made it into an object that spits out something digitally, perhaps. So you're creating a hybrid object. So what is the rationale for using the top? Is it really just to interact with it so that when you're turning it, because it rotates, then it spits out color, it spits out, there's a kind of response so that you feel like, oh, it's red, I'm getting close to my goal, etc. But I'm not sure about the effectivity of that object. I guess I don't know what
in
the
terms
answer
of what it's referencing, like what comes up in the person's mind, you mean? The fact that they see it and it's a top?
Well, I question the top, period. I'm just wondering why that is, specifically because it is nostalgic, it's about kids, and I don't know. And I'm wondering whether there's you could design something that has never been, that has no references whatsoever in any, it's really specific to your project.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where the spinning top was one example of not as much as the form as it was as what the form afforded with the example of the spinning. So in this second investigation of the challenges, there were some objects that had active movement where the full body of the form moved, which means that it's moving within my embodied space, and I perceive it as having sort of an uncontrollability. Like I'm not controlling it; it's doing something on its own. Whereas these more static objects didn't have the same feeling. So I think I chose the spinning top for the way that it could be out of control or in control, and that idea of the relationship between the spinning and the choosing of the challenges, like it's like a grab bag, like what am I going to get now? That's kind of what I was going for, not as much as the form, of the spinning top and nostalgia. So I think that's a fault of my investigations not going further to address the nostalgia, but maybe I could just redirect it and say it's more about the movement and that interaction as opposed to the, well, I'm repeating myself now. But
if I could jump in here, I think, and this isn't only you, I would say this is a comment for the whole group. Denise used to do a project on kind of the formal typology of interface components, you know, of kind of breaking down how all the parts work together. And I think all of the projects could benefit from that kind of investigation. In other words, how do you show a behavior? What's the representation of a behavior? What's the representation of an object? What's a representation of an action? And then how do those all work together so that you have a system that's kind of logical and making sense? So I have a feeling in a lot of these that you've got the kind of system part of it working, but now you've got to go back and really refine the form so that there's a sense to the typology of those forms, the kind of taxonomy of this, that allows somebody to make judgments based on the nature of the form.
mm-hmm.
So it's not just a reference to an object, but it's really figuring out what's the right object, how does it work, what kinds of activities does it follow through with in its behaviors. And I think that's a matter of time. You've kind of taken it up to what you could do in this amount of time with all this front-end system stuff, but that's what really needs to happen in all of the projects, I think, at this stage.
I mean, I could see the spinning top being like a dog's tail wags and you don't know which way it goes. So it expresses the same element of possibility as the spinning top. And I think making a judgment about which one is better is, I would love to do that. Like, which form is more appropriate. I would love to do that.